internal, like regardless of if you are from African from the continent, African in the United States, identify yourself African American, ADOS, FBA, whatever you identify yourself as. At one time in our history, we would probably have these types of conversations inside of a different forum than on Twitter. One of the forums that you might see these conversations happening is at a closed door lecture or at a community center. If you look back in the old days, even whenever these conversations did spill over into TV, it was usually on Black channels where the overall viewership would be Black people. But today, instead, we've gotten comfortable with the fact that our conversations are open for all to see. And this is the exact issue that I talk about inside of this article, Data Colonies. So, again, to reference the article, there's a real issue if you understand who controls Twitter. The person who controls Twitter is also the person who controls everything, or not the person, the entities that control everything, from YouTube to more and more Facebook and Instagram. These are all entities that are very closely linked to an agency known as the Central Intelligence Agency. Don't believe me? Do your research. Look up how Google came to be. The way that Google actually came to be is that the Central Intelligence Agency wanted a way to mass monitor people like you and I and be able to know what we were doing, where we were going, what we were talking about, have a way to track us. So they basically put out these grants and funded the creation of this thing that we now call Google. And if you think about it, every single person probably has to rely on Google in some way by way of their smartphone use. So if you use Google Maps, if you use Google Docs, if you use YouTube, if you use any of these social media avenues, then you're probably logging into Google, right? But if you understand that Google is controlled by, again, the Central Intelligence Agency, are you really logging into some type of unbiased network? Or are you literally logging into the CIA? If you told yourself that you're logging into the CIA to have this conversation, then would you do things differently? Twitter is also very much tied and controlled by Google. The Twitter cloud is actually backed up by the Google cloud. So all of these conversations you're having, and I'm not just talking about this conversation, I'm seeing our people more and more go towards using Twitter, the Twitter groups and whatever. These conversations are being uploaded to the Google cloud, which is controlled by the CIA. Now, I'm saying that to draw a parallel for us. We've created this thing in our mind called Black Twitter without questioning the veracity of if there's really that strong of a block of people on Twitter to have certain things trend whenever it pertains to us. Now, that's a possibility. Maybe there's really that many people on Twitter who's of African descent constantly tweeting. I personally don't know that many in my personal life, but maybe there is a lot. But maybe there's another alternative. Maybe we're really not on Twitter all like that. Maybe Black Twitter is actually something that's a creation. Whenever we have serious issues going on in our communities, we're actually willing to talk about things like coming together, talk about unity. What if this whole idea of Black Twitter, where we see things trending pertaining to us, was really a way to drive our conversation away from radical ideas, away from more powerful or power grabbing ideas, and to drive us instead towards talking about things like celebrity gossip or having conversations like this, Africans versus African Americans. So if you're on the continental African side of that, or if you're on the African American side of that debate, ask yourself, at what point in this conversation that you engaged in did you steer any of your energy towards your oppressor? Because you should know, regardless, African American, neither of which are your oppressors. Your oppressors are the ones who are controlling your communities. Your oppressors are the ones that are incarcerating you. Your oppressors are the ones who have your resources. Your oppressors are the ones, many times, for many of our continental brothers and sisters who have immigrated, they're the reason why we had to immigrate, because there are resources in our continent and in our homeland, Africa, is constantly under control by people who do not look like us.